where we're getting to grips with the ins and outs of critical illness cover. Still with me in studio is Raylan Dunbar, Financial Advisor at FinLogic, Dr. Dominique Stott, Business Development Executive at PPS, and Craig Scher, Deputy General Manager at Discovery Life. However, before we continue with our discussion, let's take a quick look at another viewer's question we received. It comes through from Carolyn in North Riding, and she asks, I have a comprehensive hospital plan in place. Is critical illness still necessary? Dominic, I'm going to ask you to pick up on that question. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. There's always a place for critical illness cover. A medical aid plan or a hospital plan is often capped, especially for certain types of benefits. So you might find that, for example, somebody who has a very expensive disease may require lots and lots of cover being paid out by a medical aid or that hospital plan, and then they run out of benefit, and then what? Whereas a critical illness benefit will pay out a lump sum or a certain proportion of a benefit on diagnosis, simply because that's in the terms of the contract with the definitions in place already. So that person will have a lump sum to cover any additional expenses which may come about over and above the hospital plan. If you think, for example, somebody who has a stroke, they will be in hospital for a shortish period of time, but once they leave the hospital, their expenses go on and on and on. You know, chronic medication, rehabilitation programs, where a critical illness benefit would be ideal for that, because that will provide the lump sum which can be used for those sorts of lifestyle adaptations.
So where we looked previously at majority from a lifestyle and perhaps even an income point of view, we've now got really a third element, and that's a sort of medical shortfall type of benefit, and it's seeming that it's a bit of a catch-all for lifestyle diseases. Is that a safe assessment?
And I think from sort of another thing that's very important from severe illness or critical illness coverage that we've seen and our financial advisors are using is often, as was said now, there's often a lot of lifestyle impacts. Things like if somebody is now confined to a wheelchair. Now the medical aid will pay for the wheelchair, or they may pay for the devices and the treatment in hospital, but often they won't. They'll never pay for the ramps that are possibly needed into your house, or
sure.
In ongoing nursing, that sort of thing. I think that's really where critical illness really has one of the strongest places in the market.
Okay. Raylan, when we spoke about disability cover, the question of accelerator versus non-accelerator or standalone benefits came up, and I think the question needs to be raised here again. Of course, accelerated benefit would be if my critical illness cover would diminish my life cover if I claim from it, and obviously from a standalone point of view that wouldn't happen. Where do you see those two sort of types of styles coming through from an advice perspective?
From an advice perspective, I prefer to rather use a standalone benefit in terms of a dread disease cover. Now the reason for that is really because the standalone benefit, or a non-accelerated benefit which doesn't affect your life cover, generally allows for multiple claims. Now multiple claims become a very important part of the dread disease cover. In 50 odd years ago, people were in a situation where they generally used to pass away from a specific severe illness which they had once, because technology was not as good as it is today. However, what's happening now is that a lot of people are surviving possibly more than one dread disease in their lifetime. And people need to have that cover in place ongoing for whole of life, to make sure that they've got that cover in place whenever they need it. I mean, any amount of financial planning that you do in terms of disability benefits, comprehensive medical aids, income protection plans, life cover, etc., it all doesn't come into play as much as what a dread disease benefit does. Your dread disease cover is your living assurance benefit. As was mentioned earlier, it really is. It's the one benefit that you can actually enjoy and allow your lifestyle to adapt according to your specific needs. It allows you also to make choices, and that becomes very important. You don't necessarily want to be suffering with quite a severe cancer, and then you're now in a position that you have to go to work every day after your chemo treatments. So what it does is it gives you choices and it gives you options if you do have these capital amounts paid out to you. And obviously by accelerating it, that benefit generally falls away after 1 or 2 claims, and then you're obviously in a position where you don't have future cover. So the likelihood of now having, for example, an ongoing a second heart attack or a second stroke, your percentages are roughly between 25 and 30% chance of having a second illness within a 5-year period after the first one. So people need to make sure that those benefits stay intact. Otherwise, it can also severely impact your retirement planning if it does happen after the age of 65.
You spoke briefly about multiple claims. Now that's something I think is probably quite important that we have a look at that. If I have a heart attack or something and it does pay out, what are the types of things that my company is going to look at again if I should have A, another heart attack, or B, another severe illness? Craig, from your point of view?
I think, as Raylan said, it is very important that that multiple claims are included on a policy. Obviously, somebody that has had one heart attack or has had cancer before is a lot more likely to have sort of something related to that first condition again. Now, somebody who has a heart attack is less likely to have cancer next time as they are to have a heart attack again. So a lot of dread disease policies in the market, after the first claim, the coverage for that condition or the things around that condition will fall away. It's very important just to, when selecting a dread disease product in the market, that the cover stays intact for the same conditions, for related conditions, after they've had the first claim. Just because those are the ones that are most likely to happen. It's not really useful to have a multiple claims facility where you receive your first claim, but then everything associated with that is excluded afterwards, which kind of means that the facility is not as useful as it should be.
So 2 key things we've picked up so far. Standalones are important, multiple claims important. One thing that we haven't perhaps asked is, this is a survival benefit. How long do I actually have to survive before I can actually get this paid out?
Oh, I think most companies have a survival period of about between 14 days and 30 days. The survival period is really put in place to look after to ensure that the lifestyle of the person who then survives is accounted for by the benefit that is paid out by the critical illness cover. You know, if somebody dies before that 14-day period is over, there hasn't been that lifestyle adjustment that needed to be made.
Absolutely. So in general, we're looking at about 14 days. Let's talk quickly about severity versus 100% payments. Okay. Now again, this is terminology that maybe we're afraid with, but we have 2 options. If I have a heart attack, regardless of the severity of it, I could get paid 100%. Alternatively, like we said through this SKIDAP, there are other various options of 75, 50 or 25%. How do we know what we should be looking at, Rayland?
It is very difficult to really assess, and very often people like to use a combination of the products. When you're in a situation that you have a lump sum paid out, bear in mind that you might get 100% paid out on something that is quite insignificant in your life and that you fully recover from. The problem with that type of benefit is that chances are you won't get a claim again on that same sort of benefit, as Craig alluded to earlier. So by being in a position where you're getting reimbursed for your actual severity and based on how your lifestyle has been affected according to that chart, that effectively allows a person to have those multiple claims, and when they do have that second heart attack, which is possibly much more severe than the first one, obviously the payment is made accordingly to that. However, on the other hand, you need to be aware that if you're somebody that only suffers from one specific critical illness in your lifetime, and you only perhaps get a 25% payout on one of the benefits, you've obviously lost out the 75% on the remaining benefits. So there really are pros and cons, and again, it's up to you and your advisor to sit together, really go through it in detail and see what's important to you and how your lifestyle would really be affected and how your family would be affected as well.
Rayland, Dominique, Craig, thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm sure there's probably another 4 shows we could fit in, sort of getting this thing together. But I think we've hopefully given some food for thought with regards to what people should be looking for. Thank you so much for your time and for being here.